Hey guys, you are listening to the We Could Make That podcast, and I'm your host, Andrea Ween. On this show, I interview small batch, independent food makers who've struck out on a noble cause, making the world as tasty as possible. In each episode, I'm digging into their backgrounds, motivations, and passions to decode why and how they started their businesses, and the lessons we can each take back to our own kitchens and lives. Let's get started. Today I'm talking to Andrew Black and Eric Bolliard, the founders of Black & Bolliard Brown Butter. After meeting as line cooks at 11 Madison Park in New York City, the duo launched Tasting Society, a supper club that now has over 700 people on the waiting list. After one of their hit dinners, they realized that the brown butter they'd been serving on the brioche wasn't available to the average person. So they created it. Their grass-fed butter is sourced from a single farm upstate, toasted for upwards of 8 hours, and it will totally rock your world. Their mission is to overthrow the way people have been eating butter for the past 100 years. And with a product this good, they have a pretty good shot. If you're looking for the show notes that go along with this episode, head to wecouldmakethat.com/butter. And if you're enjoying the show, please go rate and review us on iTunes. Or at the very least, share it with a friend this week. Or 10. I'm not picky. All right, let's get to the show. Eric and Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
Amazing. Thanks for having us.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So I did some research on you guys like I do on every guest. And I thought a good place to start would be with you, Eric, and your nickname in your childhood, Cookie Face.
Oh, perfect.
And I love it because I also
question.
Yeah, well, I also had a food-focused nickname that was less than desirable. And I actually can't believe that I'm going to tell people about this in public, but it was moldy cheese, which has an interesting story behind it. And I was like, Cookie Face is way better. But did you guys, I don't know if you ever saw that show Arthur. I think he was some type of animal, I forget, chipmunk or something. And he had a sister named DW. And for people who grew up in the 90s, you will remember this. And DW, they had a song about her, and it went something like, everyone thinks that DW stinks like a piece of moldy cheese, but I say that she's okay as long as there's a breeze. And in about the 5th grade, I was on recess, and all of our friends were putting each other's name into the song. So it would be Eric, Andrew, Andrea. And when it got to me, all the boys came over and they heard the song and they heard my name. And for the next 2 years, that was my nickname until one day I completely broke down and everyone realized that it was kind of mean.
Kind of mean, yeah. Mine stuck for about 5 years until I completely refused one day to stop responding to anyone, and I kicked it within 2 weeks.
That's exactly what happened with me, too. We were playing knockout basketball style at recess, and it was me and one other kid against each other, and everyone started chanting moldy, and I broke down and refused to keep playing.
Funny.
But Cookie Face, where did it come from? What was the impetus for it?
Ever since I was young, I had some small little beauty marks on my face.
Huge moles.
Kids are brutal. That's the worst.
Yeah, I mean, the guys on the basketball team really dug into that one, but then all the girls started calling me that, but it was fine.
Yeah. And what about you, Andrew? Did you have any unfortunate or fortunate nicknames back in the day?
My parents are both hippies, and I grew up in the Southwest, and I don't know where these names came from, but my mom would come up with some kind of ridiculous, I don't know what the origin was, but they weren't even real words. She would call me. One of them was Sunty, and that was actually short for a bigger nickname that was Suntamunt. Again, not a real word. Awesome. But
so Cookie Face and Suntamunt brown butter should have been our name.
Totally. If you guys need to rebrand ever, I think we have a good direction for you to go in. Let's talk a little bit about your company and brown butter in general. So I guess we could start with why brown butter? Why is that what you guys chose to go with?
Well, brown butter is a familiar ingredient for chefs and many cooks around the world. Eric and I have cooked with it our entire careers, going on a decade now. and we've really fallen in love with it. It's one of the scents and flavors that is super unique to what it is, and it's a really versatile ingredient. And we started out by serving it always whipped with grilled sourdough at our supper club tasting society in Brooklyn, and there was always just a overwhelming love for it, and great feedback from our guests. And I think maybe just one night after one of the supper clubs late, we kind of came upon this idea of like just selling it in jars. I mean, it's a simple product, but a lot of care goes into it, and it's undeniably delicious.
Yes, it is. I met you guys at the Brooklyn Eats event, I believe, here in Brooklyn, and tried it and was completely sold and knew I had to get you on the show. So, yes, it is amazingly delicious. Can you walk me through a bit of the process? Like, how long do you guys toast it? What does the making of it look like?
Well, I mean, we've cooked a lot of brown butter in our day. Since the first professional kitchens we cooked in, it was just this overwhelming scent that was like really slowly toasting on the back of the stove for, it depends on how much you're doing at a time. We do it in 50-pound batches, and it'll go for 6, 7, 8 hours, just kind of evolving and becoming more intense, more aromatic, more complex. And yeah, by the end, when we infuse it with fresh bay leaves or dried chili, it's really completely takes you over, and it takes a while. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of attention, but it's a simple thing with great reward.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Wow, I had no idea that it was for so many hours, and that's pretty impressive. I think every time I've tried to make brown butter at home, I always get nervous that I'm going to burn it and then take it off too quickly, and it doesn't work out.
Take it really far. We've definitely figured out the threshold at which we can toast it and extract as much flavor out of the milk solids as possible without actually burning it, but really getting the most out of the amazing grass-fed butter.
Yeah, and what is special about the grass-fed butter? I know that there's some different nutritional benefits in there that I've read about, but can you talk a little bit about why that's important?
Yeah, I mean, grass-fed butter has always been highly regarded and well-respected in kind of like the health food community, but just in terms of high-quality butter, grass-fed is always the way to go. So when the cows eat grass, that in turn will yield a more yellow butter, and obviously more flavorful too. The yellow is like the beta carotene in the butter, which then will, in our case, translate to a darker browned butter. So there's also usually a higher fat percentage in grass-fed butter, which we really like, not only because the yield is great for us, but also, our brown butter is just basically a deeply toasted, really rich browned fat. So we love like the highest quality butter that we can get. We want to get our hands on, and we use this amazing farm upstate that we had the pleasure of visiting earlier this year. And it was really eye-opening and inspiring to see and work with the farmers and learn about the process more in depth. It's really amazing what they do up there.
That's great. Yeah, I've been on a high-fat diet, which is basically like the best thing ever. So I've been eating my fair share of grass-fed butter, and it's definitely way more delicious for sure. So yeah, I love that. Let's take a step back and talk about your transition from line cooks at 11 Madison to food entrepreneurs. What has that been like?
It's been an adventure. I mean, Eric and I met there a little over 5 years ago now, and it's really flown by. I mean, we came there for the same reason, and we're there at a really amazing time. I think, for us, it was incredible to see the path in which the restaurant was going towards and the changes they went through. There's a lot of exciting things happening at that point for the almost 3 years that we were each there. And we each branched off and decided to kind of do our own things for a little while, but all the while having our supper club, like I mentioned before, tasting society, where we would showcase kind of our own food and style, and really just an outlet for us to be creative. And now, as as you might be familiar, we've kind of taken our own paths to learning new things and exploring new avenues of the industry, which we're still takes up quite a bit of our time in our careers. But starting this food business has been a great learning experience. I mean, we're still small, but we're excited about the future and the potential for the product. We spent a long time really delving into the ins and outs of what we needed for our labels and the requirements for producing it, and where we needed to be, and researching the market and what was available, for us, like through our friends, what resources we could use. But there's still a lot to learn, and I think it's important to keep that in mind, because there's so much out there that we can take in, but we only have so much time that we can devote to it at this point in our careers.
I read too that travel was a huge part of the inspiration for not just the current company, but just your life and branching out, and especially for the dinner parties. So can you talk a little bit about what travel means to each of you?
Yeah, I mean, I always speak about my food as travel inspired. I think Andrew and I are super aligned in so many ways, and one of them especially being the emphasis that we put on giving ourselves the opportunity to really delve into other cultures and take a moment between, big career changes to get away and to go see another culture, to go eat another cuisine and see a different part of the world. And obviously we're blessed to have that opportunity, but we also create that opportunity for ourselves, and make a point to allow ourselves to be inspired by those other places. And that's definitely influenced a lot of our supper club. And we actually, own a lot of that inspiration and the evolution of our supper club to the evolution and transition into Black and Bouleyard brown butter, because it wouldn't have existed without that. So it's just this cycle that continues.
Travel, like Eric said, I mean, is super important to both of us, and we each have our own experiences to speak of, but it's very much it's very important to us, and it very much has influenced our food, the past few years especially.
Yeah, and I think you can see that definitely in the supper clubs, right? And just the menus that you guys have pulled together, they definitely draw that inspiration from all over, especially Southeast Asia. Do you have like a clearest or most memorable food memory from traveling? Like there's a meal or a moment that you're like, yeah, that's what I think of when I think back. Is there something that's the brightest?
I mean, like you said, when Andrew and I were in Southeast Asia together, that was like seeing a whole new world. Just the emphasis on food in the daily lives of those cultures, it's mind blowing, because here it's like a lot of times we just eat to get by, but there they eat to live, and it's a beautiful thing, because it's just like so much more integrated into the daily life of those cultures. And I'd say Southeast Asia, and also my time cooking in northern Spain in the Basque Country, where I saw some of the best milk and saw butter being made, and the highest quality of I mean, grass-fed there is like almost, in the valleys of the Basque Country, is almost like the standard, the norm. Here it's, blown up to be this dramatic health craze, but there it's like, it's just cool to see in other places how the importance of butter and how it is such more a normal part of their lives.
Yeah, you've definitely named my two favorite food places. So Spain is at the top of my list just as a place in general, but especially the food. And then Vietnam. And I think what you're saying about people living to eat there, it's really so true. You wake up in the morning and there's the soup woman who's available from 5 to 6 o'clock a.m. And that's it. And if you don't get to her, like, you're not having that soup today. And everything is just planned around when the next meal is, which dovetails really nicely with my my whole food philosophy. If I could be eating all the time, I think that I would be a happy person.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about how you guys grew up. I mean, like, think back to your 10-year-old selves. Do you think that that 10-year-old would be excited about what you're up to today?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to be honest, I never thought that I would own a business, but now here we are, trying to figure it out. And it's interesting to think back about like our interests as children. For me, food was always, or at least like cooking at home was always a big part of my life, because this was, I guess, the early 90s. And I was raised vegetarian, so like we would always cook at home, like a lot of stuff from our garden, or there's just like a different kind of way of being brought up, I think, especially back then. I mean, now it's a lot easier to eat vegetarian or vegan, and I think even 20 years ago, it was a lot more difficult, so we were forced a lot to cook at home. And my dad was a baker for a while, and, baking breads with him growing up was always, exciting to see, and kind of tested your patience as a little kid, waiting for the bread to rise and like learning about what was happening in it. And yeah, I mean, it's really, it's fascinating to learn about, to see the journey about how we learned about food from back then to now. Because it's kind of like the more you learn, like the more you realize, you don't know that much because there's so much out there.
Yeah, I completely agree. So are you still a vegetarian?
No.
Okay. Tell me about that. When did you try meat for the first time, or when did you become a meat eater? That's such an interesting, usually it's the other way around. So it's interesting to hear people who were raised vegetarian. And I think you'll have a lot more of this in the coming generations, I think, because I know a lot of friends who are raising their kids vegetarian and vegan. So it'll be interesting to see if there's like a massive revolt of people who were raised that way and are now like, oh, bacon's really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like Eric said, we're similar in a lot of ways. And even our parents, I feel like, are very similar. We have always appreciated vegetables and kind of like healthy eating. And we're raised similarly. But I think, I would always eat like pepperoni pizza or whatever at my friend's house when I was little. So I didn't really know the difference. But then when the time came to like, move out and go to culinary school is when I decided that. And it was probably a few years before that when I kind of made a transition, but it was a long time coming.
Yeah. So was culinary school kind of a given then at that point?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Arizona, and I had the opportunity to go to U of A for free, basically, because, I had good grades, and, I didn't really know what I wanted to study though. So I just decided to go straight on to culinary school, and I moved out of my house and went to Scottsdale and out to the Cordon Bleu, just like north of Tucson where I was born, and was there for about 2.5 years. And really, that was probably one of the hardest, most demanding times of my life. I mean, we're all busy, and even now we're as busy as anyone else, but that was just a really big learning point in my life. I mean, I had never worked that much, and I had never, been on my own so long, like, and been responsible for so much. And so I was exhausted for like 3 years straight, just like, I don't know if I can do this. And then, stuck with it, and fast forward 6 years later, and so much has changed.
Yeah, for sure. What do you feel like has been the most surprising thing? And both of you can answer this. What has been the most surprising thing along this journey?
Well, I think for me, I never really intended to cook. I went to Boston University School of Management and basically quit my job before I started. And then just jumped right into kitchens and loved it. And 10 years later, creating amazing things, but I never went to culinary school. I didn't have the real background of my parents. I never cooked sauce over my grandma's stove, or basically got brought up on dried chicken, overcooked broccoli, and rice pilaf. But
Yours sounds similar to mine.
My mom made good meatloaf. My dad made good chili. But so I appreciated like simple things, but I didn't have much of a culinary background like most chefs have that typical story. Growing up as a young child on a step stool, over the stove. But I wouldn't change anything at this point. It's just I'm so immersed. I mean, I wouldn't want to do anything other than be around food every day. So that was surprising when I made that transition, but I couldn't imagine doing anything else at this point.
Yeah. So how did you find yourself in a kitchen?
Started cooking toward the end of my years at university, and every chance I got, I'd cook for friends. I'd cook when I went home, and then instead of investing another God knows how much on culinary school, I said, "Oh, let me just try this out." Got my foot in the door. Never worked in a kitchen before, and yeah, just loved being in that environment and creating something. I had imagined myself in a suit and tie, for the rest of my life, and my father was raised me, from a modest career of custom woodworker and carpenter, and now it's really cool in retrospect to see that transition for myself of creating, something from raw materials in a similar way and thriving from it. So actually very aligned with how he supported our family at this point.
So it's interesting that one of you went to culinary school and one of you didn't. So I'm curious what advice you would give to someone who's maybe considering going to culinary school. Is it a good investment? Should I just go start in a kitchen? Like, what advice would you tell that person?
I would say don't, but Andrew might say otherwise.
I mean, I wouldn't change anything I did. I'm really happy I went. But I mean, there's a lot of ways to learn how to cook. I mean, I was going to say one of the most surprising things that I've learned along this journey was just that, there's 1,000 ways you can like peel an onion and roast a piece of meat or whatever it is. Like you just have to make sure you learn from the best, and it may be difficult to differentiate like what's right or not when you're just starting out. But I think having the right attitude and working hard everyone says that, but it really means a lot. And if you can't do that, you're not really cut out for the industry. So as long as you can, stay positive and you're willing to bust your ass and I think having a bit of a diverse background or interest in, some fine dining, some casual food, some, different avenues of the industry. If you can get your hand in a little bit of them, a little bit of several of them, I mean, I think it makes you more of a well-rounded cook or chef. And, I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to work in a few of those places. And there's so much more to learn. I mean, it's like we mentioned before, through travel, like you see all these other techniques, and exploring these cultures through their cuisine, I think, is an amazing way to see a new place and just learning about how they do things. It's often very different than maybe how you were trained. And it could be the best thing you've ever eaten. So it's really never ending. I mean, there's so much out there.
Sometimes people get so caught up on what the path should be instead of what they are able to bring to the table or what they're able to make happen on their own. And you kind of get sucked into this. And I think it's the same with any industry, just going to college, for example. I worked pretty heavily on things related to the gap year, which is the year between high school and college, and just encouraging students to go out and travel and take some time for themselves before they're just thrown into the mix of whatever comes next. And I think the same thing can be said for culinary school or going straight into a kitchen or, anything really.
Yeah, I think that's a huge realm of maturation of an individual, and as a chef is taking that time to explore yourself and other places and other cultures and really extract as much from it as possible before you just get, quote unquote, stuck in the next thing.
Yeah, you can really learn a lot about not only that place, but also yourself.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thinking about your own journeys and the process that you've taken to get here, I think sometimes people give the highlight reel, but what are some times that you guys have kind of felt a little lost in this journey or like things weren't going to work out? And give me a little bit of that story of the struggle.
Well, I know I touched on it, but when I first started, honestly, like I was really overwhelmed. I was going to school in the morning to culinary school for 5 or 6 hours, and then driving straight to probably the hardest job I've ever had, and that was working for this guy Kevin Binkley in Arizona. It was a small kitchen, but it was like a fancy restaurant for Arizona standards, and you did everything, and it was a long shift. I was learning a lot, but it was really demanding, and you'd work until 1 or 2, which is standard, but again new for 17, 18-year-old, and it was really hard. I mean, I was exhausted. I would have like one full day off, maybe a week, and it was pretty crazy for a kid who didn't really know what he was getting into.
Yeah. And so when did you make the decision to move to New York after that? Because that seems like you're taking a huge jump. I mean, Arizona sounds intense, but then to go to a Michelin-starred restaurant in New York, that's quite the jump.
It's nothing like New York. Yeah, I mean, Arizona's great, but the food scene there is not really happening. So, I mean, my chef at the time, Kevin Binkley, really talented guy. He would always come to New York for the James Beard Awards and eat at as many places as possible. And he ate at 11 Madison when they had 1 star. Loved it. And he came back and was raving about it. And that's when I really first heard about it. And started kind of looking into it, got interested. Really never thought I would live in New York. I had visited a few times and wasn't too fond of it, but I kind of realized that this was the right choice because I needed a change and I was ready to leave, and it seemed like I kind of had nothing to lose, so I went for it, and it was probably the best decision I've ever made. I would never give it up for anything. I mean, the people you meet, the people I met, especially at 11 Madison, but just working in these restaurants that are, well known, you meet people from around the world, and the connections we've made is priceless.
Do you feel like it's factored into kind of your food philosophy too? Has that shifted since you've left Arizona?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think New York is like the greatest food city in America, and having the opportunity to work in a fancy restaurant, but also be exposed to a lot of other really delicious, cheap food here. That's not everywhere, and I feel really lucky to be here to explore that, and coupled with New York being a great hub to travel, it's been really eye-opening to just see what's possible with not much to work with produce-wise or availability in other countries versus New York, where you can have anything, anytime, any day.
That's what I love about it. I think when I first moved here, not first, but maybe a few years in, ordered off of Seamless, and it was like I wanted, naked chicken tenders, mashed sweet potatoes, 2 other random like applesauce and something else, and like I could get it all delivered to my door within 25 minutes. I was like, this is unbelievable. So you guys have been working now together. You met on the line and now obviously have this business and the supper club. What are kind of the keys of your partnership that keeps it functioning and healthy and going strong?
I mean, I think firstly, we are very aligned in many ways. We agree way more than we disagree. It's actually, it catches us off guard, I think, when we actually disagree, which obviously that's the nature of any business partnership, but we are very aligned, and I think we saw that from the get-go when we started cooking together at 11 Madison Park a few years back. But I think it comes down to like a mutual respect for each other, holding each other accountable. We both have extremely high standards and expectations for ourselves, which trickles down through our company and pretty much everything we do culinarily. So yeah, a little bit of checks and balances, a mutual respect for each other, and just holding our standard no matter what, never cutting corners, I think keeps us moving forward with such force.
What are your favorite parts of being makers now?
I mean, I love seeing people's reactions. I mean, we see that as being a chef in a restaurant, but really being firsthand when people maybe have never heard of brown butter or don't know how to use it, and you give them their first taste of it and they're usually blown away. That's awesome. And the fact that we're the first people to put it in jars and sell it in stores is pretty special, I think, and we're really excited at the potential for it. You know, the feedback has been great so far. Like, it all started at the Supper Club, serving it there, but now that we're in several stores in New York, we're gaining some traction, and people are starting to recognize the name, and we're just really excited that at least it's a delicious product. We have to just figure everything else out.
Yeah, I mean, that somewhat unfamiliar still, but it is we're kind of at the forefront. It's starting to pop up in recipes as an ingredient, your more mainstream food magazines and whatever, but like as far as putting it in a jar and getting it out and exploring the versatility of it and encouraging people to use it on any and everything is, I mean, it's super exciting because you have to educate people, and that's like a huge responsibility of what we need to do in order to make this successful. But yeah, like Andrew said, it's like a young child tasting something for the first time and being just blown away by the complexity and then the aromatic and the flavor of it. It's very telling, and it reiterates our confidence in the product. I'm surprised at how we can continue to taste it time and time again and equally be blown away and excited about what we've created. And the fact that it's such a simple thing is kind of beautiful, because we're perfectly okay with anyone's thought process about why didn't I think of that? And, it's so simple. Why didn't I think of that? And we take that as a compliment because we did.
Totally. Well, that's all the best ideas. Everyone always says that. Why didn't I think of that? It's like, then you're on to something.
Yeah, I mean, we're really excited about it. I think it's maybe more rare than most people realize, but when the founders or owners of the company that have a food product really love their product and would eat it every day or incorporate it into their day somehow, I think that's kind of hard to come by. We've met several people along our journey that maybe have a product somewhere that they're just not very excited about, and it's too bad.
And it shows, it shows through in the story and in the passion and when you're meeting people face to face. So you can definitely tell that you guys are passionate about what you're doing and you really believe in it. And I think it does make the difference in the long run.
When we're doing a demo and someone's tasting it and like, where can I get this? And like, right here, right now. And, the jars are just flying off the shelves. Like, we get amped up. It's the momentum, gets us going, and it just constant positive reinforcement is only going to compound itself. So we're just getting on this wave right now, and we're looking to ride it into shore.
Definitely. What does success look like to you, or what does success mean to you guys?
I think being recognized not only in the local community but eventually nationwide. I mean, we want to be able to build out our distribution to get our butter on shelves around the country, and just to kind of spread this word that brown butter is delicious and people should be using it more, and we want to make people happy. I mean, that's what food's all about, right?
We literally want to change people's butter eating habits from the last 100 years.
That could be a tagline in itself, but I also love your other tagline you guys have been throwing around, butter from another udder.
Yeah, well, that one's being trademarked. Yeah, we can't let that slip away.
I love it. How did that come about? Was that like a conversation at 2 a.m? Like, where did that come from?
I would say it could have come from like a few whiskeys or whatever, but I got to give credit partially to my sister. She's kind of laughs at her own jokes, and she blurted that one out, and we pretty much just took it immediately.
Nice. She'll appreciate that you gave her credit for that. Her and whiskey.
Yeah.
All right, so I have some quick fire questions if you guys are up for them. They're just fast and fun ones. You guys can answer as long as you want, but the questions are pretty short.
100%.
Cool. So what is your favorite food city?
Bangkok.
San Sebastian.
Any reasons why?
Because Thai food is the best kind of food there is.
I like the conviviality of bouncing from one place to the next, eating small bites and drinking small glasses, and it's a very communal and unique style of eating and drinking.
All right. What is your go-to drink of choice?
Dirty martini.
Coconut seltzer.
Wow. All right. Coconut seltzer. Your favorite cookbook or the cookbook that you've gifted the most to other people?
A Return to Cooking by Eric Repair from Le Bernardin.
I've probably gifted the 11 Madison Park cookbook several times.
All right, good. And then the last one here is always a fun one for me because I feel like people are so pulled together. Everyone's on their best behavior on the podcast. So what's a bad habit that you're working to overcome right now?
Saying too much. Especially in front of my niece and nephew who say too much also.
Probably biting my nails, which is disgusting.
Yeah, that's a common one, I feel like. Both of those are pretty common ones. You know, like kids come around and get into the picture and people are like, I have to clean up. I didn't realize I spoke like a sailor all the time. Well, guys, this has been really great. Can you just give me a little bit about what's next and how people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, great. So you can send us an email, hi@blackandbouillard.com. You can get in touch with us on social media @blackandbouillard. Visit our website, blackandbouillard.com. But, we're happy to answer any questions coming our way, and we're excited about, what lies ahead. We're going to be expanding our production. Eric and I are still making everything by hand, stickering every jar by hand. But we're looking into getting some help with that, and then also just expanding to some bigger outlets here in New York.
Yeah, and we'll be offering it online soon enough. Right now, we're not shipping to all states, but we'll have an e-commerce site up soon, so everyone can get their hands on Black and Bouillard brown butter sooner than later, because we need to spread the butter across the nation.
Slather the nation in butter. Are you guys still going to be doing the supper clubs here in New York as well, or are those taking a backseat for a while?
They're on a permanent indefinite hiatus, I guess.
What, are you guys busy or something? You can't do it?
There's about 700 people on the email list that are waiting for the next invite to Tasting Society. But maybe we'll just introduce them to brown butter, and they'll be just fine.
We're excited to focus our energy on the new company and really build it out to something great. But that's not to say we won't do a pop-up here or there to help promote it. We've done brown butter dinners in the past, but our focus now is to figure out the business side of things.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, guys, thanks so much. Have a great afternoon, and we will talk soon.
Thank you very much.
Amazing.
Great chatting.
Bye.
Don't forget, show notes are at wecouldmakethat.com/butter. Have a good one.